Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast. We're now going to be moving on to some NBA playoff action. We're going to start with the late game from last night, which saw the Oklahoma City Thunder come back in the fourth quarter to defeat the Dallas Mavericks 100-96 and end up evening up this series as they head back to Oklahoma City. This was yet another great game. This series has all the feels that it could go 7, as we've had a handful of really competitive games, and yet again we saw the stardom of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And it's funny with him because it was about halfway through the third quarter, and you just almost, I don't know what it is about Shai's game, probably the fact that he isn't super effective from the three-point line, but his scoring just flies under the radar, I feel like, a lot of the time, and he got himself really going in that third quarter and helped carry it through the rest of the game. But I was just curious, and I looked up and I saw he had 20 points on 8 of 16 shooting, and I'm like, this dude just continuously every single game gets his, and he does so almost so quietly, just an absolute killer in the mid-range. That's where he got the majority of his damage done last night, and he ends up with 34 points on 14 of 27 from the field. Again, did not make a three-pointer in this game, and even as far as free throws, I believe he went 6 of 6, but some of those were intentional fouls at the end as well. So again, just mid-range after mid-range. That short corner shot, he hit a couple of them in the left short corner where it looked like he was essentially behind the backboard pulling up over defenders. I mean, he just does not get enough credit, I feel like, in terms of being a difficult shot maker, and it feels like, I don't know, at this point I'm so ready to just retire from NBA Twitter because he gets this reputation of being a free throw merchant, but he is just so much more than that, and he provides such an elite level of scoring for the Thunder where it seems like they really need it, because at the end of the game we saw sort of some of the shortcomings of the youth, and it's not just in this game that we've seen it, but a couple, Jalen Williams, for as incredible as he is and still believe that he has the, potential to be an all-star player, possibly even all-NBA someday. He hasn't necessarily been fully the same version of himself from the regular season so far in this postseason. Last night sort of struggled again, at least from a scoring perspective. 5 of 19 from the field, scored 14 points. Now, he is still an asset because defensively he has all of the length to throw at other teams. And again, I definitely don't think he's a negative by any means, but then you have those possessions where it was late in the game with just a couple minutes left. Derrick Jones Jr. is sealing off Shai in this instance, and Jalen Williams is stuck with the ball, and he ends up taking a pretty ridiculous step back 3 attempt that he ends up missing badly, and it seemed like at that point the Mavericks were going to be able to go out and run and score on the other end and switch this game. The Mavericks do run down the other end and get a Derrick Jones Jr. lob from Luka, but it was SGA coming back on the other side, and he actually did miss his first mid-range attempt in this situation, but just feels a lot more comfortable at the end of these games with Shai with the ball. And, again, I think that this Thunder team, they are tons of fun to watch, and they even up the series, and they have a great chance to, come out on top in this. But at the same time, there are just absolutely sort of adjustments that the team is going to have to make. We've talked about it in the past here. The Josh Giddey minutes have just continued to decrease over the course of the game. He is, I don't know if I want to fully call him a non-factor, but I would probably say that he is a net negative in general, where he keeps starting these games, and it's probably to some degree just to maintain the type of rotations that they've had over the course of the year. They bring in this bench unit that's been very effective for them, and they like the way they can sort of stagger these minutes. But Giddey is just, he's he's not a fit at all on this Oklahoma City Thunder team, and because of that, they're trying to sort of play around with who that fifth player in the closing lineup is going to be. And I thought that Cason Wallace really showcased why he should be that, the way that he was the point of attack defender. And I wasn't 100% sure if this was by design of the Mavericks trying to get Cason Wallace switched on to the likes of Kyrie and Luka, but Wallace was there every single time, and I thought he did an excellent job. And if you go back to the first round in game one, the one game where it was really competitive, CJ McCollum tried to get Cason Wallace switched on to him in the final possession there, and Wallace ended up poking it loose from him, playing great defense and forcing the miss. And I feel like at that moment it almost should have been clear that Cason Wallace has the two-way ability. He doesn't necessarily have a fully developed offensive game just yet, but he's great catching shooting from the three-point line and just provides a lot of positives for this Oklahoma City Thunder team. So I personally would be in favor of them trying to ride out the rest of the postseason for however long they're in it with Cason Wallace in these closing minutes. But on the Dallas Mavericks side of this equation, again, it's one of those situations where I feel like we had this conversation a little bit with Joel Embiid in the first round. It is definitely the injury factor is a reason why we aren't seeing him at 100%. But it is still trying to balance the praise of him and, talking about how good he is, but then anytime he is inefficient, it's because of the injuries. And I have no doubt that it is because of the injuries that we're not seeing the full version of Luka right now, but he just continues to struggle from the field, where we have seen him have one, maybe two good three-point shooting games, and last night, yet again, 2 of 9 from 3, 6 of 20 from the field as a whole, and just seems like in some of these clutch situations, he isn't the player we see, and that includes free throws, where last night the Mavericks trailed by 2, and Luka had a chance after getting an inbounds, driving into the lane. A foul was called. I'm not going to say it was a bad call. It was a little bit iffy to me, but either way, he gets to the free throw line and he misses his first attempt, and that just about did it in for the Thunder in this game. So it's clear that he's not 100%, but again, this whole, isn't, how much credit do we have to give him versus how much of an excuse is already built up for him? It's just sort of a weird paradox to me. But outside of that, I think that Kyrie, it's really fun to see the way that he has gone into a little bit of a playmaker first over this postseason run, and that he's been making the buckets in big time situations. But last night was probably, one of his worst games, and I still wouldn't bury him for this performance. I don't think that he's the number one reason to blame, but it is, it was a spot where it felt like it would have been substantial if he was able to step in for them. But sort of on the note of the fact that Kyrie has gone into this playmaker mode and Luka hasn't really been very efficient up to this point in the postseason, it got me thinking, because of the fact that the Mavericks were a bottom 5 team in the league this season in terms of assist percentage, what percentage of shots made were off of an assist, and they were 25th, I believe, in the league. And last night, it just seems like the ball movement is at such a higher level for the Mavericks, where they were able to assist on, it was 26 of their 36 makes. That was good for somewhere around 70% of their baskets coming off of assists, and that is something that I really like to see. As much as we know that in isolation Luka and Kyrie can both individually be great, the fact that we are seeing the development of this team game a little bit more, which includes PJ Washington, who for the third time in this playoffs, I think the third straight game as well, has led the Dallas Mavericks in scoring. Last night scored 21 points, and he has just been a revelation for this Mavericks team, and it's really fun to watch. I sort of likened the situation piece of this sort of similar to Aaron Gordon when he was traded from the Orlando Magic to the Denver Nuggets, where now his sort of supplementary skills that do impact winning, he wasn't necessarily able to fully showcase those in some situations where, winning wasn't necessarily a priority, and even if it wasn't a priority, the talent around him just wasn't good enough, so he had to sort of force the issue a little bit more himself, and that's just not necessarily what he was. But now we're seeing PJ Washington in this third role, and he has just been such a massive piece for them. And, the defense that he provides, the defense for the Mavericks in general just amazes me how well they have played. And again, credit the Thunder for holding the Mavericks to 96 points. And like I said, coming into this series, people aren't talking about it as a defensive matchup, but these are two of the best defenses over the past few months. And for the Mavericks, just the rim protection is so elite for them. 13 blocks as a team. You get 4 of them from Derrick Jones Jr. from your wing, and then the fact that Gafford has 3, Derek Lively has 4. It is just a really impressive situation, which is, baked into this matchup in particular. The Thunder are a good perimeter, a 3-point shooting team, and can score from the perimeter generally, which makes this a little bit more of a difficult matchup, I think, to some degree at least, for the Dallas Mavericks. But I still think that they have done an excellent job when the 3-point shots aren't falling, and in large part they're not falling because some of these rotations defensively, they just look like this really solid unit that, we give the Timberwolves all the credit in the world, and deservingly so, for the type of team defense that they play. But Mavericks are sort of on that level as well. Jason Kidd has, I don't know if it's specifically from him, I'm sure that Kyrie and his individual buy-in from a personal standpoint has helped to impact it. But just all of these players understanding when to send the double teams, who is going out to the perimeter to make that second slide and take away the 3-point shot. I've just been very impressed with the Mavericks defense throughout this entire run. And again, I think that this is probably just about the most compelling series we have had up to this point. I hope it goes all 7, but let me know what your expectations are in the comments section. I think that we have a great one on our hands. And I think that this is also going to be, this type of a tough series is going to definitely help the Thunder as time goes on here to sort of be stronger mentally. And again, I know that the personnel part of it with Josh Giddey is definitely an issue that sort of extends beyond, individual maturity. It's just so weird with him. Like the fact that even in these, bench minutes when Shai is on the bench, that he can't operate the offense himself. And again, he's picking up these stupid turnovers and fouls. It is pretty ridiculous to me. And, ultimately last night, his box score is a +6, but it just does not feel like, and, there was a stretch there in, I believe it was the second quarter, where the Thunder were sort of storming back a little bit and making this, more competitive after the Mavericks dominated the first quarter. Giddey was on the court. It just didn't feel like he was necessarily a part of that run whatsoever, which definitely helped his plus-minus. But also let me know in the comments section what your thoughts on the whole Giddey aspect of this series as well. Do you think they should continue to start him and just play him these short minutes like they have been? But that is all we have on this segment for now. We are going to be taking our second break here, and when we come back on the other side, going to be diving into the Boston Celtics getting pushed by the Cleveland Cavaliers despite no Donovan Mitchell. So stick with us and we will be right back.